Hi, I'm Nancy Stark. Welcome to Money Talks. With me here today is Deanna Booker.
Hey.
Dee is our in-resident financial expert, and she's also the Community Outreach and Communications Manager for Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Maryland and Delaware. Dee, before we get started, could you tell us a little bit about what CCCS does?
Sure. We are a nonprofit counseling agency. We've been serving folks here on the Eastern Shore since 1966. We just celebrated our 45th anniversary.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. We're doing all kinds of financial counseling, budget counseling, credit counseling, housing counseling, bankruptcy counseling, anything that we can do, any kind of help that we can offer to move folks forward in making them more financially informed and financially secure. That's what we're doing.
That's a wonderful mission, and guess what? We've got a real topic for you today as a result of that.
All right.
As we go to, as we're recording this program, those wonderful folks over in the White House and in Washington still haven't come up with a way to avoid the fiscal cliff. Mm-hmm. And we're all sort of waiting here on pins and needles to see what happens and how it will affect us.
Right.
And given I know you know everything, I want you to start with that. Tell us, what exactly is the fiscal cliff and how does it affect us?
Okay. The fiscal cliff, it's a term that refers to some consequences that may be coming up this year due to expiring tax breaks. So, higher taxes on folks with higher incomes, mandatory deficit reduction, spending cuts, that kind of thing. So we all are, like you said, on pins and needles because it's so tenuous. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, how we're all going to be impacted. And so it's no wonder that Americans are worried and anxious and kind of waiting on the edge of their seats, no pun intended, to see if we're going to go over or what's going to be done. But that's what that term means.
And hopefully maybe by the time you actually see this, they'll have come to some kind of a resolution.
I hope so.
But while we're waiting, I thought we might today talk about some things we can all do to survive no matter what the consequences are.
Sure.
And it's interesting when we look at it, over the holidays, a few people spent more. Mm-hmm. In fact, spending was up. But overall, when people were polled, they all, I won't say they all, but many stated that they felt a great deal of trepidation going into this year because they didn't really know what was going to happen financially. With that said, what can we do? What plans can we put in place to help us weather the financial storm?
Well, I think that the main thing is having a game plan. It's easier, I think, to weather that storm and deal with that anxiety and that kind of thing if you've got some sort of financial game plan. So I think it starts with doing an assessment, of where you stand financially.
Figuring out where you are.
Exactly.
And how do you go about doing that?
Well, I think it's just a matter of checking your income, first of all, sitting down and really assessing where you stand financially. And it comes with a budget. It starts with that budgeting process.
We always say that.
Yeah, we always do. It starts with that budget. And of course, what our income is part and parcel to how we're going to be able to develop that budget. So I think if you start there, if you start with thinking about, okay, what's my income? Because it's not difficult. It's not difficult to really move towards
the steps that go into that.
Exactly. To move
Walk
towards
us through them.
Yeah, moving towards getting that budget set up. It's just about understanding, calculating what my income is. Where am I? What money do I have coming in? And then it's listing and totaling up all of my expenses. What things do I have to pay out? And understanding what that math looks like, subtracting.
Ooh, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. Subtracting those expenses from the income. If you're left with a negative balance, then that's how you know that there needs to be something done. You've got to start looking at ways to reduce expenses, increase income, that kind of thing. But I think doing that financial assessment is where you have to start.
Otherwise, you may go over your own private fiscal cliff.
Exactly, right there in your living room.
Okay, so you've made that financial assessment. You have sort of an understanding of where you stand financially. You've set up your budget. Does it pay to have financial goals?
It does. I really think it does. Financial goals are like the wheels on your car. They keep you moving in the direction that you want to go in. So I think having goals and understanding how they break down and what they're about, I think that's important. There are different kinds of goals, different time frames when it comes to your goals, but I think having them is important. I really do.
What kind of goals are there?
Well, there's three different kinds, really. Short-term goals, goals that you might be able to reach within a year. Maybe you need to buy an appliance, that's something short-term. You can get to that within 12 months and you can get that set. Then there's an intermediate goal. That's going to take a little longer. Maybe you're talking about 1 or 2, maybe 3 years. And that's something
so it's a little bigger investment.
Exactly. That's something like saving for a car, maybe. You've got to work up to it. And then, of course, there are long-term goals. And even with everything that's going on in the here and now, we still have to have an eye kind of to the future. So your long-term goals, maybe that's saving for the house or planning for retirement, investing, that kind of thing. They're going to take longer. They require, like you just said, even more of an investment. So there's more time.
They require more money.
Exactly.
It's going to take, what you get out of them is also larger.
Exactly.
Too, though,
that's exactly
probably.
right.
For those of us that have never actually set up a goal, how do you go about doing that?
Well, I think it takes a little thinking. You've got to sit down for a little bit and be realistic and think about what's practical and how you're going to develop it and what it is that you're actually trying to work for. And then whenever I'm working with folks and we're talking about goals, I always give them an acronym. It's SMART, S-M-A-R-T. Your goals should be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So those things really frame, how
each of those elements is important.
Each of those elements is important in framing goals. But it really does come down to thinking about what is going to be best for you and what really are you working toward.
So you've got those aspects in mind and you set up your goal and hopefully it meets all of those criteria. Mm-hmm. But say something happens, you have a financial setback. How are you going to deal with your goal then?
Right. I think then you just have to revisit. You've got to sit down and you've got to say, well, okay, this obstacle maybe has come up. What am I going to do? How am I going to plan around this? Does this now mean that maybe I have to push my goal back a little bit further? So maybe I've got to take a little bit away from, what I was contributing to saving for that goal. And now I have to handle this obstacle. So maybe that just means now my goal is going to take me 18 months to reach, where I thought I was going to get to it in 12. You've just got to plan it out. You've really got to work it so whatever that obstacle was that came up, it doesn't necessarily blow up your whole plan. Maybe, though, just a little adjustment.
It's just like your budget, in other words. Both of them are flexible and you should be reviewing them regularly.
That's exactly right.
And accommodating from there.
Exactly.
Now, it seems to me, given how we're all sort of on economic pins and needles,
yes,
one of the areas we really need to be focusing on this year is on savings. Mm-hmm. Because without an emergency savings, if there are financial setbacks, what can we do? But that's a lot easier said than done, especially if you're on a limited budget.
Right.
What advice do you have for viewers as far as concerning saving?
I'm really a big fan of the pay yourself first savings plan. So that's when you're getting money into a savings, you're contributing money into a savings painlessly. So I tell my clients a lot, when you get paid, have some of that money, have a small portion, and it doesn't have to be huge amounts. Have a small portion of that money automatically diverted. When your check goes in direct deposit, have a little bit diverted automatically to your savings account. You never see it, you never miss it. And again, even if it's just a few dollars, that's adding up. It's a great way to build up a little nest egg.
That makes perfect sense.
Right, so when an emergency does come up or when there is something, you've got a little bit, socked away that you can rely on. So I'm really a big fan of that. And then also, we have to think about just what we can do in our own personal life, on our own personal expenses, the things that we're spending money on. So maybe we've got to cut back. Maybe we're not going to buy a coffee out every day.
I miss that coffee.
Exactly. Maybe you're going to pack lunch. I love this statistic. Saving 50 cents. Now, does that seem just so inconsequential? Saving 50 cents a day can lead to almost $200 extra a year. It's like $180 a year. 50 cents a day.
I'm going to go home and check the couch.
Check the couch, exactly. So just that little bit. Eating out, if we cut back on eating out, if we ate out 2 times less per month, it would save us almost $400 a year.
Now that's amazing.
Right, so we have to think in those kinds of terms when we're deciding how we're going to make some changes and how we're going to make ourselves a bit more secure when it comes to saving.
Well, that makes full sense.
Yeah.
As well as saving, one of the areas I think that if we're talking about vulnerability from an economic point of view, we look at what our expenses are, and especially if we have debts, how that works. Right. Say I came out of the holidays and I owe more than I thought I might, and that could obviously be a possibility. How do I go about dealing with that?
Well, I think we have to look at what we did over the holidays and really try to figure out how we're going to come back from it. So if we're talking about credit cards, maybe we went overboard. So maybe this is the time where we're going to look at the balances that we owe. Maybe we might be able to qualify for a balance transfer. So maybe we can get some of this money transferred, or all of this balance transferred over to a card with a low interest rate, or 0 even percent interest rate. And that's going to enable us to be able to pay it down more effectively. But even if we can't qualify, for a new card with a 0% or something like that, don't be discouraged, because we can still kind of stick to our plan. If we've got our budget set up, we can stick to our plan. We can work on paying more than the minimum payment.
That's a very important point.
Exactly. And we can just kind of get to it slowly that way, but get to it. It really is about just coming up with the plan and then sticking to it.
Well, one thing that would also probably help us is if we were able to increase our income.
Oh, yes.
And that's a little harder said than done right now, because
yes.
the job outlook is still pretty sluggish.
Right.
But what kind of advice would you give consumers about how to increase their income?
Yeah. Well, you're right. It's easier said than done, just because how the job market is still today. But I think if you can get a second job, if you are able to work overtime, obviously those are things that are going to go towards increasing your income. But there's some other things too. If you always get a really big tax refund at the end of the year, you might want to consider going in this year and changing your exemptions, because if you do that, that's going to mean
you're paying it all to Uncle Sam rather than holding on to it yourself.
Exactly. So if you change those exemptions, that's going to mean that every pay you've got more money in your pocket to work with, to pay the bills, to put towards the budget. So I think that's a really good idea. Also, for folks who may be, in certain situations, you really want to look and see what kind of government benefits might you be eligible for. Disability, unemployment insurance, that kind of thing.
All of those could be helpful.
Absolutely, they could be helpful. Right? They could be helpful, as far as additional funds are concerned. So you really do have to look at that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's all really good advice. Say I've done all those things that we just talked about. Mm-hmm. I have looked at ways of saving. I've looked at ways of reducing my costs as far as different things that I have as far as expenses. Right. And I'm trying to pay down my debt, but I've done all of that and it's still not working. I am living on the edge and I'm getting farther and farther in debt due to the interest that's racking up. Mm-hmm. What can I do?
I think at that point, it's time to get help. Okay. It's time to get some outside help at that point. If you've really done all of that, you've done all the work, like you said, and you're trying and you've done everything and still it's not working, that's the time when you got to get some outside help. But I'll also say, if you're considering getting outside help, you've got to be careful. You've got to do your homework. You've got to do your research. Every organization, every company that's out there offering assistance with money problems, they all aren't the same. So you really got to know what you're dealing with. For example, debt settlement isn't the same as credit counseling. So you've got to know. You've got to have the information.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. For those people that are out there that don't know what debt settlement is, what exactly is it?
Debt settlement, you might also hear it referred to as arbitration or debt negotiation. It's a process where creditors are going to agree and be willing to accept less than what is owed, on the balance of an account, but consider it paid in full.
That sounds like a pretty good deal.
And it can be. It sounds like it, but a lot of times debt settlement companies are for-profit organizations. They charge really large fees for their services, and we've seen the commercials, we've seen it on TV. They make all of these really big promises. We can cut your debt in half and pennies on the dollar and all this kind of thing, and most of the time it isn't true. Most of the time they're empty promises, and a lot of times folks can end up worse off than they were. So it really isn't,
they end up putting
always
out all that money and they're no better off.
Exactly. It's not as good as it's made to seem.
Well, we talked about debt settlement and you were talking about credit counseling. How does credit counseling work?
Well, credit counseling is about education. Okay. It's about education. It's about making sure that folks are better off, than when they came. So when you go to a reputable credit counseling agency and you talk to a qualified credit counselor, you're going to get a full financial assessment. You're going to get sound advice that's going to help you and lead you down a path to financial security. Most of the services that a qualified, reputable, accredited counseling agency like Consumer
CCCS,
Credit Counseling.
right?
Yes, like CCCS of Maryland and Delaware. Most of the services that we provide, they're free of charge.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So though that kind of thing matters, it makes a huge difference. It really does.
So your credit counseling is free and confidential.
Absolutely.
How does a person go about getting it?
They would just call our toll-free number. It's 1-800-642-2227. When an appointment is made, you make an appointment. During that process, the counselor or whoever makes the appointment for you is going to let you know what you need to bring. The counselor is going to need information about your income, about your expenses, and we're going to do that assessment with you. We're going to look at where you stand financially. We're going to assess your income and your expenses. We're going to look at the debts that you have. We're going to work on setting up a budget with you, for you.
So you're going to help me do that.
Exactly. So it really is that comprehensive kind of counseling that you're going to get from an agency like ours.
Oh, that's excellent. And I'm going to assume you also are going to help me look through different options I have if I have debts, how to take care of them.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to look at what's going to be the best option for you because everything isn't for everybody. So depending on your situation, maybe a debt management program is what you need. And so if it is, we're going to walk you through that process and we're going to get you set up there. We're going to look at everything, anything that might be able to help. Maybe somebody is coming to us and they're presenting with problems that maybe we can't help with, but maybe our community partners, maybe, they can. Maybe somebody needs support for, a gambling problem or substance abuse. We're going to make those referrals. It really is very, very comprehensive. It really is.
That sounds wonderful. Now, going back, I want to talk a little bit more about debt management. Mm-hmm. I know that CCCS has a program, a DMP program. Why do people decide to go into a DMP program?
Most of the time people tell me that it's for the structure, because the program really does offer a lot of structure. A lot of the times folks struggle with paying their debts just because it's too much. There are too many.
That.
Exactly. It's too many. They can't keep up, different due dates and that kind of thing. A debt management program offers some structure. Not only does it come under the auspices of, getting that kind of comprehensive counseling that most folks who come to us are so desirous of, but also it's that structure. It's the structure of the program. They just have to make one payment a month. Everything's taken care of. They can be assured that payments are going where they're supposed to go. So that's really important to a lot of folks. It alleviates some of the headache that comes along with trying to handle debt. Right. Now, also, of course, there's some benefits to the program. Sometimes creditors make concessions, for a person who comes in.
What exactly is that?
Sure. If for somebody who comes into a program, a creditor may lower their interest rates. Mm-hmm. They may accept lower payments, thereby enabling a client to pay debt off more quickly. So that kind of thing comes into play, when people are deciding whether or not to do a debt management program. So all of that kind of thing, I think really goes towards their decision making.
When a person is in a program, I've talked to a few people that have gone through DMPs, and it sounds to me like it takes a while. It isn't necessarily an instantaneous process.
Oh, no. And I always caution my clients, we didn't get into this debt overnight. No, we're not going to get out of it overnight. So it can take a while. A debt management program can last up to 5 years. It really just depends on how much debt a person is in and how committed they are to getting out of it.
But the other thing about that, where you're in it for a fair point of time, during that time you have a chance to really change your financial habits, it sounds like, or gain skills that will help you for the rest of your life.
That's exactly right. It's not just about paying off the debt, even though that's important and we want to get the debts cleared up, but it's about, like you said, that habit change and that behavior change and learning new skills, because again, folks are able to take those skills that they learn while they're in a debt management program and play them out through the rest of their lives, share them with their families and that kind of thing. So that's really a huge part of it.
Well, and I can see why you said earlier that credit counseling has more education involved than, say, debt settlement does.
Absolutely.
Well, with that said, you know what? We're moving right along here. We're coming closer to the end of our lovely program.
Already.
With that in mind, I kind of like to shift gears because here we are. It's the new year, and unfortunately, that means one thing: we're coming up on tax time.
Don't say it.
With tax time coming up, what advice would you give to people on preparing?
Well, and I know I've said this before, Nancy, when you've had me on, it's about documentation. Now is the time to really be gathering all of your documents together. Don't wait to start pulling things together. Now's the time to get prepared for taxes, to really start gathering your documents.
So get your paperwork together.
Exactly.
What kind of paperwork are you looking for?
You're looking for two kinds, basically. You're looking for your income-related documents. So that means your W-2s if you worked for an employer, or your 1099s if you were, self-employed or a contractor, or Social Security, that kind of thing, or if you got income from rental properties or investments. So you're looking for that income paperwork, and then you're also looking for your paperwork that's related to your deductions. Usually that means your 1098s, if you're going to claim mortgage interest, that kind of thing, receipts from what you've paid for student loan interest, charitable donations. You want to be gathering all your paperwork together.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
I understand that for some of the folks that are here on the Eastern Shore, there actually is free tax preparation services available. Tell me about that.
That's exactly right. One of our partners, we're so proud to be a partner with the Maryland Cash Campaign. They are offering free tax preparation to folks who qualify. There's some income qualifications for it's for individuals who earn $25,000 or less annually, and for families who earn $50,000 or less annually. But if you fall into those criteria, you're eligible for the free tax preparation. And it's wonderful. These sites, they're doing all of the tax work that you could imagine.
That sounds wonderful.
They're letting folks know what they qualify for. So if you go to one of these sites, they're going to let you know if you qualify for the earned income tax credit. They're going to let you know all of the things that you need to know, and it's all free. Like I said, if you meet those income qualifications.
And you have someone who is experienced and understands the tax code.
Absolutely.
So the bad news is, once I've gone through and got all those tax services, thank God those people helped me, and I find out I've got money to pay, I'm going to say boo-hoo. But if I have a refund coming, what's the best way to use it?
Well, we talk about that a lot. How about I start with what's not the greatest way to use it?
Okay.
This isn't the time to, run out and buy new 80-inch TVs. I think we're all tempted, right? I think we're tempted if we've got a lump sum of money, we might want to go out and get some big ticket items. But I think a better thing to do, again, it goes along with our financial assessment. Look at where our budgets need to be strengthened. So is there some debt that we need to pay down? Could we take this refund and really, take a chunk out of some debts that we have? Savings. Can our savings be bolstered? What are our goals? We go back to those long-term goals,
right,
or even our short-term goals. How can we use this refund to further those along? I think we need to look at those sorts of things first before we go out, and just kind of blow it on
something we might not need in the long run.
So I think those are the better ideas. Again, and it goes back to that financial assessment and that plan. We want to make sure that we're always focused on how we're going to further ourselves along down the path of the plan.
For folks that are here on the Eastern Shore, how can they find a site that's close to them?
Sure. They can go online, go to Maryland Cash's site. It's www.mdcash.org, and they are keeping a list of sites by county, so you'll be able to see where there's one, close to you. Also, the IRS has some really great information about tax preparation, so you could go to their site, www.irs.gov, and get some information there too.
Oh, that's wonderful. I also know that they have some resources for free tax preparation as well.
They absolutely do.
Which is wonderful.
They do.
Well, Deanna, I can't believe it. We are almost at the end of our program. It's gone really fast this time. Before we go, could you tell us one more time a little bit about how to contact CCCS and the types of resources that you offer?
Absolutely. Folks can call us at our toll-free number. It's 1-800-642-2227, or visit our website, www.cccs-inc.org. We have so much great information on our site. There's an interactive budget worksheet. There's all kinds of e-learning courses, podcasts, all kinds of great information in the education section of our website. So you can go there and check it out. Our Facebook page, our Twitter feed, we've got all kinds of great financial tips and advice. So definitely all kinds of great information.
Well, tell me, how do we like you on Facebook?
Like us on Facebook at CCCS of Maryland and Delaware. Our Twitter profile is CCCS of MD and DE.
Oh, excellent. Well, those are all wonderful New Year.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
resources. And as always, you're a wealth of information.
No,
Thank you so
thank
much
you.
for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
And a big round of applause for wonderful PAC 14.
Oh, yes. Thank you, PAC 14.
And for any of those of you who would like to send us issues or questions for future episodes of Money Talks, you can certainly contact me, Nancy Stark, and you can contact me by phone at 410-357-0614 or by email at ncstark@cccs-inc.org. And on that note, folks, thanks for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again next month on Money Talks.
Would you like to see your community organization or nonprofit group featured on PAC 14? To get started, contact us at 410-677-5014 or visit our website at www.pac14.org. PAC 14 is a great way to connect with your community.